Hello everyone, my name is Hassan. I am a cross and friendly person who enjoys learning new things and improving my English skill. Thank you. What does what your mean?
It's kind of the ultimate conversational shrug, isn't it? Usually it means someone is indifferent or they're just giving up on the argument. Depending on the tone, it can be a little dismissive or just a way of saying, I don't really care. Do you usually hear it used as a way to end a conversation?
When do people say whatever?
Oh, in a million different ways. Like when you're arguing with someone and you've realized you're not getting anywhere, so you just say it to stop the noise. Or when you're deciding where to eat and you're truly fine with any option. Do you find it more annoying when people use it, or do you think it's actually a useful way to avoid a fight?
Is whatever a positive word?
Generally, no. It usually lacks that spark of enthusiasm. It's more of a neutral or even a slightly negative word because it suggests that the thing being discussed doesn't really matter. I can think of a few times where it actually feels okay to say, though.
Can whatever show indifference?
I'm not quite sure I follow you. Could you tell me that in a different way?
Why do people become indifferent?
That is a massive question. It's usually a mix of everything: the people they meet, the things they go through, and just the way they react to the world. Some people change because they want to, and others change because they have to. Do you think people change for the better or for the worse more often?
Is saying whatever always read.
I'm guessing you mean read as in how people perceive it. It's not always the same. If you say it with a smile, it's just relaxed. But if you roll your eyes, it's basically a conversational door slamming shut. The tone is everything.
Can whatever express frustration?
I can't actually see you, so I can't read your expression. I'm just listening to the way you're talking.
What feeling are hidden behind whatever?
I think you're asking about the word whatever again, right? Usually there's a bit of frustration or boredom hiding in there. Sometimes it's a shield too, a way to avoid admitting that something actually does matter to you, but you're not ready to talk about it. Do you think people use it to hide their true feelings often?
Why do Congress often say whatever?
I'm not entirely sure what you mean by tingliers. Could you tell me a bit more about that or explain what you mean?
Can whatever man agreement?
I'm a bit lost on that one. Are you asking if there's an agreement to protect the environment or something else entirely?
Does indifference affect communication?
I'm sorry, but we're almost out of time on this call. It looks like our session is wrapping up in about a minute, so I don't want you to get cut off. You can always call me back later to keep talking.
How can we avoid being indifferent?
That's a deep shift in topic for the final minute. I think it starts with curiosity. When you actually care about the why behind things, it's a lot harder to be indifferent. But since we're almost out of time, let's pick this up next time you call. Bye for now.
Why is crying important?
Crying is kind of like a pressure valve for the soul. It lets out the things you can't put into words. It's actually a biological way to signal for help and release stress. Since we're right at the edge of our time, why
Can indifference hurt others? Can indifference hurt others?
I think it can, and sometimes more than anger does. Anger at least shows that you're invested enough to be upset. Indifference is just a void. It's telling someone they aren't even worth the energy of a reaction. Do you think that's usually the case, or can indifference ever be a healthy boundary?
How do parents reach to what you are?
I'm guessing you're asking how parents react to indifference, right? For a lot of them, it's incredibly frustrating because they're trying to connect and they're hitting a wall. It can feel like a rejection of their effort, which often leads them to either push harder or just give up. Do you think parents generally handle that kind of silence better or worse than other people?
Is what you are common in daily life?
If you mean indifference, then yeah, it's everywhere. It's in the way people scroll past things that actually matter, um, or how we handle small talk with people we don't really care about. It's almost like a default setting for a lot of people to protect themselves. Do you feel like you see it more in your own life or just in the world in general?
Why do people lose interest?
I think it's often because the spark just isn't there anymore. Sometimes it's a slow fade where you just realize you don't have anything left to say. Other times it's a reaction to being let down too many times, basically a way for the brain to protect itself by checking out. Do you think losing interest is usually a choice or something that just happens to you?
Can indifferent affect studies?
Oh, definitely. When you're indifferent toward what you're studying, the information just doesn't stick. It's like trying to pour water into a cup that's already upside down. You're going through the motions, but nothing is actually getting in. Curiosity is the engine for learning. So without it, studying just becomes a chore. Do you feel like you've been struggling to stay interested in something specific lately?
How does stress lead to indifference?
I'm not quite sure I follow. Could you try explaining that a different way?
Is impact important?
I'm sorry, I'm still a bit lost. Could you tell me a bit more about what you mean by invest?
Can indifference become a habit?
I really think it can. If you use it as a shield long enough to avoid getting hurt or disappointed, your brain eventually just stops trying to engage. It becomes the path of least resistance. Do you think that's a scary prospect, or does it feel more like a survival mechanism?
How does indifference affect teamwork?
I'm assuming you mean indifference here, right? W- It's a total momentum killer. When people on a team stop caring about the outcome or each other, actually, I have to let you know our call is almost up. We'll hit the limit in about a minute, so I don't want you to just get cut off. You can always call me back later, though,
Why should we listen carefully?
because listening is how you actually see someone. It's the difference between just hearing noise and actually understanding the point. But since we're right at the edge of our time, why don't you call me back and we can really dive into this? Bye for now.
Indifference helps sometimes.
You know, you're right. Sometimes it's the only way to get through a day without losing your mind. It's like a mental filter that keeps the chaos from getting too loud. I'd love to hear more about when you think it's actually helpful, so call me back when you can.
How can we show interest in other? How can we show interest in other?
I think it starts with the basics, actually listening, not just waiting for your turn to speak. Asking questions that let them expand on their story rather than just yes or no ones. Shows you're actually curious about how they see things. Do you think it's harder to show interest in people you already know well or people you've just met?
Why do people ignore problems?
I think a lot of it is just fear. It's easier to pretend something isn't there than to deal with the stress of actually fixing it. Plus, some problems feel so big that the brain just decides to check out to protect itself. Do you think people do it because they're lazy or because they're actually overwhelmed?
Can indifference affect mental health?
I really think it can. When you're indifferent to everything, you lose that connection to the things that make life feel vivid. It can lead to a kind of emotional numbness where you're not just avoiding the bad stuff, but you're accidentally blocking out the joy and excitement too. Do you think that kind of numbness feels like a relief at first, or is it more of a heavy feeling?
How does caring improve friendship?
Um, I'm guessing you mean screening in terms of being selective about who you let into your life, right? It can actually make friendships deeper because you're spending your energy on people who actually align with your values and treat you well. Instead of having 20 surface level connections, you end up with a few that actually mean something. Do you think it's better to be an open book with everyone or to have a few strict layers of protection?
Why should we express feeling?
Because keeping everything locked inside is like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. Eventually, it's just going to pop up to the surface in a way you can't control, usually as stress or a sudden outburst. Expressing it is like letting the air out of the room. It gives you space to breathe and lets other people actually understand where you're coming from. Do you think most people are afraid of the reaction they'll get, or are they just not sure how to put the feeling into words?
Can whatever sound disrespectful?
Oh, absolutely. It's often less about the word itself and more about the delivery. A word that's totally normal in one context can feel like a slap in the face if the tone is off or the timing is wrong. I'm curious, did you hear something recently that felt off, or are you thinking about a specific word?
How can understanding help relationship?
It's basically the bridge that gets you across the gap between two different perspectives. When you actually understand why someone is acting a certain way, it's a lot harder to be angry or dismissive. It turns a conflict into a puzzle you're trying to solve together instead of a fight you're trying to win. Do you think understanding is something that happens naturally, or do you think it's a skill you have to actively work on? I have to let you know our call is almost up. We'll hit the limit in about a minute, so I don't want you to just get cut off. You can always call me back later, though. Bye for now.
Does indifference create distance?
I think it does. When the indifference is there, It's like a wall that doesn't just stop communication, but actually pushes people apart. It makes the other person feel invisible. And that's a pretty lonely place to be. Since we're right at the end of our time, let's pick this up when you call back
Why is communication important?
because it's the only way we actually get to know each other. It's how we share our messy parts, our wins, and everything in between. Without it, we're all just guessing what's going on in someone else's head. We are totally out of time now, so
Why do people stop crying? Why do people stop crying?
that's a really poignant question. I think for some, it's because the silence they're looking for in prayer doesn't always answer back. And that quiet can start to feel like abandonment instead of peace. For others, life just gets so loud and cluttered that the habit slips away, or they find a different way to connect with something bigger. Do you think it happens more because of a loss of faith or just a loss of rhythm?
How do work affect emotion?
You mean like acting or just trying to get through a social situation where you don't actually feel the way you're supposed to?
Is what you are used indifferently in different station.
I'm a little lost on that one. Could you try explaining that a different way? I'm not sure I follow what you mean by different stations.
What makes people feel ignored?
I think it's when the gap between what they're saying and what the other person is reflecting back feels too wide. It's that feeling of being invisible even when you're standing right there. Usually because the other person is just skimming the surface of what you're actually trying to communicate. Do you think it's the silence that hurts more or the feeling that you're being heard but not actually understood?
Can indifferent cash loan lines?
Mm, um, I'm not sure I've ever heard of that as a standard thing. I Are you talking about a specific app or a way to borrow money between friends?
Does indifference affect families?
I'm guessing you're talking about the feeling of being ignored, right? It can definitely ripple through a family differently. In some homes, it might lead to a lot of like loud arguments because people are fighting just to be seen, while in others, it creates a heavy, quiet distance where everyone just stops trying. Do you think some families are more prone to that kind of silence than others?
Why should we respect others?
I think it's the baseline for any kind of real connection. Without respect, you're not actually seeing the other person. You're just seeing a version of them that fits your own needs. It's less about following a rule and more about acknowledging that everyone is carrying a world inside them that you know nothing about. Do you feel like respect is something that should be given automatically or something that has to be earned?
Why do people become emotionally distant?
I think a lot of it is a defense mechanism. It's usually a way to protect yourself when you've been hurt or let down too many times. And by pulling back and creating that emotional buffer, you're basically telling the world that it can't get close enough to cause any more damage. But the trade off is that it also keeps the good stuff out. Do you think distancing is usually a conscious choice or does it just happen without you realizing it? Actually, I have to let you know our call is almost up. We'll hit the limit in about a minute, so I don't want you to just get cut off. You can always call me back later to pick this up.
Can listening improve relationship?
I'm not entirely sure what you mean by reaction shape. Could you explain that a bit more? But just a heads up, we're right at the end of our time, so you might want to call me back in a second so we can really get into it.
Why should we care about others?
I think it's what keeps us from becoming islands. When you actually care about someone else, it pulls you out of your own head and reminds you that you're part of something bigger. It's the only real way to fight that indifference we were talking about earlier. But we're totally out of time now, so call me back soon and we can really dive into this. Bye for now.
How can we stay emotionally connected? How can we become better listeners?
I think it starts with actually being present, not just waiting for your turn to speak, but really listening to the space between the words. When you stop planning your response while the other person is still talking, you start picking up on the things they aren't saying. Do you think you're more of a fixer who wants to jump in with a solution or someone who just wants to understand?
How can we stay emotionally connected?
I think it comes down to consistency in the small things. It's about those little check ins and being brave enough to share the unpolished versions of yourself, even when it feels risky. When you both keep showing up with that kind of honesty, the connection stays alive instead of just becoming a routine. Do you feel like that connection usually fades slowly, or does it happen in a sudden snap?
Why do people say I don't care?
I think it's often a shield. Sometimes it's a way to avoid the vulnerability of actually caring because caring means you can be hurt. Other times, it's just a way to shut down a conversation that's become too heavy to handle. Do you think people say it when they're actually indifferent or as a way to hide that they care way too much?
Why are emotions important?
They're essentially your inner compass. Without them, we'd just be processing data instead of actually experiencing life. They're what tell us when something is wrong, when we're safe, or when something is truly meaningful. Do you think emotions make life more complicated, or do you think they're what make it worth it?
Can understanding reduce agreement?
That's a really interesting way to put it. I think it can actually. You can understand exactly where someone is coming from, why they feel that way, and what their logic is, and still completely disagree with them. In a way, understanding can actually highlight the gap between two perspectives more clearly. Do you think it's possible to have deep respect for someone, even if you're totally opposite in your views?
What lesson can we learn from indifference?
I think the biggest lesson is that indifference is actually a warning sign. It tells you exactly where the connection is broken down or where you've stopped growing in a relationship. It's like a mirror that shows you what you've stopped valuing. Do you think indifference is more of a lesson in loss or a lesson in where to put your energy instead?
What message does whatever a genre dropped in different touch use?
I'm sorry, I'm a bit lost on that one. That in a different way? I'm not quite sure I follow what you mean by a journey wrote in different touch.
What is the impact of indifference on life?
I think it's a slow erosion of the things that make life feel vivid. When you're indifferent, you aren't just blocking out the pain or the frustration, you're accidentally filtering out the joy and the excitement too. It eventually turns the world into a grayscale version of itself, but actually, I have to let you know our call is almost up. We'll hit the limit in about a minute, so I don't want you to just get cut off. You can always call me back later so we can keep diving into this. Bye for now.